then it should definitely just be genetically correct, okay?
As long as you know the grasp on what it is.
Alright, so here you go, guys. Let me say this, we're gonna always go over right afterwards. If you come in late, or if you miss, then you know that this will be one of your slides. We usually have more than two, the syllabus says two, but I usually fail that, so it's gonna be fine. And also let me say this, if you don't do as well as you wanted to on this, and at the end of reviewing it, we figure out that these were all things we talked about the other day, then just go back and figure out why not. Were your notes not complete? Did you not get to review other people's study guides? Did you not get to re-listen? Do you figure out what's going wrong and change it? Okay? We all know the definition of insanity, right? Mm-hmm. Thinking that you're doing this, you're going to keep doing the same thing you did maybe in high school, and it's not working for you. So change up, okay? But it's okay, because I'm hoping that you did okay, but even if you didn't, you just have to figure out why not. So let's see if they're all things we discussed the other day. Distinguish between the terms anatomy and physiology. You basically said anatomy is the study of form and structure, and also location, orientation, situation. But you said something like that. Everybody will say it a different way. And physiology is the study of how that structure functions or works. Right, so that's what you said. Who's considered the father of medicine? I can't imagine the spellings. Okay. Hippocrates. Hippocrates, right? So that's exactly right. Organs are composed of two or more tissues. And cells come together to form tissue. You thought I was tricking you, didn't you? You thought, okay, listen, I don't have enough energy to trick you. I'm too lazy to trick you. Nobody's trying to trick you. You guys be confident in what you're doing. And that was the answer. Tissues and tissues. Distinct. You thought there's no way I did that. Yeah, that's not right. I didn't. Okay, distinguish between histology and cytology. You said histology is the microscopic study of tissues. And cytology is the study of cells, right? So what exactly does DNA stand for? I wanted it exactly. Deoxyribonucleic acid, and I stressed that you needed to know it exactly. So when, if you go back and listen to lectures, you'll hear that I stress certain things, and you can almost guarantee that they'll be on these quizzes and that you'll need to know that. Using a stethoscope to listen to heart sounds and lung sounds, this is a procedure that we refer to as auscultation. And then touching is palpation, right? So auscultation and palpation. List 4 of the most common elements, and I left off the S, sorry, elements that make up all living things. They are hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen. And then the next one said list the 4 major categories of macro, big old molecules: carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. HIV stands for human immunodeficiency virus, and it's the etiology. And I gave you all the definition for that, I think, didn't I? Etiology means the study of the cause. If I didn't, okay, hopefully you figured out, of the disease known as AIDS. And I will give you credit this time for AIDS, but I will want you to know what it stands for. It's acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Okay, so define pathology. You said it's the study of disease, isn't it? Study of disease. And then listen, example of an organelle, which you put?
Mitochondria.
Good.
Nucleus.
Golgi, nucleus, mitochondria. Are organelles alive?
No.
Are molecules alive?
No.
Are elements alive?
No.
What's alive?
Cells.
Y'all are so awesome. Was there anything on here we did not talk about in lecture? Was there? And by the way, some days there will be. Because some days I'll be writing this 10 minutes before y'all are supposed to take it, and I'll think, I talked about that. And well, I didn't. It would have been another class or something. Maybe I didn't talk about a period that week. And you all will let me know, won't you? And you won't freak out when you see it, because you'll thought, I'm letting her know we didn't talk about that. And I'm going to throw it out. Here's what I need you all to do. I only get to ask 10 questions. There would have been more things on the lecture. Review your lectures. Just keep reviewing over them. Every time you review over them, you will realize, well, maybe not really consciously realize, but things will be sticking harder, right? So review them, because what are our multiple choice test questions coming from? Not really the quizzes essentially, but from all lecture notes, aren't they? Yeah. So keep reviewing your lectures. So I can keep all of these questions. This would be fair. Okay, great. Well, I'll do that. Thank you for that. And again, nobody's to worry or panic. But if you didn't get, I'd say if you didn't get above a 60, if you missed 4 of those, and by the way, the maximum is 100. A couple of you will have gotten 110 because you'll have gotten them all and a bonus. But I'll only put 100's maximum, so you'll get that. But anyway, if you got better than a 60 on this one, fine, but figure out why you missed the ones you missed. Never leave things blank, because I'll give partial credit. I'll always give partial credit. So tell me what you know about it, even if you think, I don't think I know anything about that. You know more than you think. Yes,
So like
Infinity.
we had like 1, 2.
I give partial credit.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah. And I do give partial credit. And it was Nicole who actually asked me this morning. It was a good question about when you get to your resource, your digital resources, where is the cadaver? And see, when I look at it, I see the picture of the cadaver, so I just click on it. But you all don't see that. You see something called reveal, and it's the word reveal. And so click on that, and it takes you to the cadaver. Okay. All right. So we are going to have some things this semester that are going to be kind of swirly about that, probably that digital resource. So we're going to work together. And if there's something I find that, you guys come and say, I could not get to that. And everybody else says the same. Don't be doing that. But everybody else says the same, then I'm not going to, then certainly I wouldn't, require it of you if nobody is able to do something. Okay, so here we go. Ready? Keep going. I have no idea where we stopped, kind of, but I'll try. So let's see. Where did we stop? Would somebody like to tell me that?
I don't know, we're kind of up
Oh, I don't belong for ground. I don't belong. No, I don't. Okay, look. So we understand this history that if you get to take a medical anthropology class, it'd be great, because it's crazy what people have done to get to where we are right now and what we understand in medicine. Have I talked to you all about medical ethics? Did I talk to you about medical ethics?
No.
Okay, so some of the ethical things that have gone, non-ethical things that have gone have been kind of crazy. But and this is all just FYI. When I say something's FYI, I'm not pushing on an ethic. But think about this, back in the gladiator days, they used to take gladiators, these living prime people in their life, and they would cut them open and watch them die so that they could see how the inside organs were working for those few minutes before they died. It was such a common practice that they had to actually make a law. Don't do that. You wouldn't think that you have to tell people to not do that, right? But that's what happened. And I want to give you, I want to let you know, do you think that's horrific for us to think about? Do you think nothing like that is still happening? Yeah, actually, things like that do kind of still happen. So really, we understand that we live in this world where lots of information's coming is happening, and we're doing a lot of different discoveries. We're going to talk about the scientific method in just a second, and how we go about studying our natural world, and especially for medicine with humans. But I want to let you know, not too long ago, there was a doctor who was given accolades, if you will, and a disease was named for him. It's called Hansen's disease. Does anybody know, you won't write this down, does anybody know what Hansen's disease is? What is Hansen's disease? Anybody know what Hansen's disease was known as before Dr. Hansen gave us so much information about this disease and how it's contagious and what goes on with this disease? Okay, it's a disease that most of you all have heard of called leprosy. We don't call it leprosy anymore. How many of you have not heard of leprosy? How many of you have not heard of leprosy? Raise your hand high. And the rest of you have, right? Okay, So let me tell you about leprosy. The reason we wanted to change the name of that disease is because of the stigma associated with leprosy. Maybe you have, even if you've never heard of leprosy, you've heard of the word leper used, like, oh, they're like a leper. Let's just ostracize them. Have you ever heard the word leper used? Okay, well, I'm really glad we haven't, because it's actually used in a very ugly, hateful kind of way. Leprosy was a disease that most people had heard of because of religious writings in the Bible, in the Torah, the Quran. These religious writings talk about leprosy and lepers as people who were unclean, unhealthy, and they needed to be ostracized from society. So they were put outside the city walls. They were sent to islands. They were put away because they were unclean. They were dirty. God had smited them for whatever reasons. God had smited them. So it's don't read your religious nightmares. Okay, so no, never mind. So, but no, read some of that scary stuff. So that's what leprosy was. But Dr. Hansen, and by the way, this disease is really kind of horrific. It's caused from a bacterium, and I want you all to know it means a bacterium. What do we have now to treat bacteria? And do most bacterial infections, can we treat them effectively and cure people? Yes. So what we know now that wasn't known then is that leprosy is a disease that's actually caused from a bacterium called Mycobacterium. This is the genus name. Mycobacterium is the genus, and the species is called Leprae. So this is the genus and species name of the bacteria, and you want to know what's a bacterium that causes leprosy. This bacterium will get in someone's body, and over time it can affect the cutaneous tissues, causing them to die and become gangrenous and drop off. So fingers, noses, lips, eyelids, it becomes incredibly disfiguring. There's also a systemic form of this it's going to eventually kill you, right? You don't really need your cutaneous fingers or noses or eyelids or ears. You don't really need those to live, but you do need your lungs and you do need your kidneys, right? So eventually it will end up killing these people. So anyway, because of the disfigurement and the things that were happening, these people thought that God or Allah or had smited them, and they needed to be ostracized because they were unclean, they were dirty, they were whatever. So leprosy, that word leper, being a leper, has a very negative connotation because of the prejudice associated with the unknown, right? Because sometimes when we don't know things, what do? We make up reasons for why they happen, right? So anyway, that happened. So Dr. Hansen, and it wasn't even that long ago, Dr. Hansen had some patients that had the beginning of leprosy, and he diagnosed it. He knew they had leprosy. He had some patients. So you know what? He thought, I need to know more about this disease, because he was a scientist at heart, but he was also a psychopath. Because let me tell you what he did. He took tissues from his patients that had leprosy, and he infected his healthy patients, not with their permission. He wanted more patients with leprosy so he could learn more about the disease. And he thought that would be okay. Let me tell you, we didn't lock him up, instead we named the disease after him. We call it Hansen's disease. So there are a lot of things that go on like that. Immunizations, and just briefly, I'll tell you about immunizations. Immunizations, and we're going to talk more about it, but I just want to introduce this to you guys. You all know that immunizations are given so that people's immune systems will recognize a certain disease, and then that person won't have to have that disease. So you give an immunization to protect, to immune somebody from having to have a disease. Is that correct? All right. All of you all have grown up with immunizations, and you all have actually grown up with the idea that when somebody has a child, because everybody in this room, even if you don't like children, somebody who's had a child and you held a baby probably, right? Before 50 years ago, even for this, 50, 60 years ago, for immunizations and antibiotics. Before then, like my mother and my grandmother, especially my grandmother, we started with some immunizations, not all the ones that you had. But anyway, My grandmother, when she had a baby, she knew it was a 50-50 chance that they would make it to 5 years old. 50-50. People knew that. It was their reality that their child only had, how many parents are you? I want you to think about holding that child tonight and thinking there was only a 50-50 chance they'd make it to 5 years old. It was such a known thing that in some cultures you wouldn't even name the child until they got to a certain age. You don't give them a name. Is that part of any of y'all's reality? The only reason it's not part of your reality is because of immunizations. They have saved millions of lives. I'm not making that number up. Do the research. But now, because people have not had that in their consciousness, there's nobody that they know who's died of measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, diphtheria. There's nobody they know. My grandmother lost 2 children from diphtheria and 1 from whooping cough. But because nobody in these generations have, they think, it's okay, I'm not going to give my children immunizations. But you guys, all we have to do is actually study and research and whatever, and we will see. We understand the progress. We're humans, so we will make progress, then we'll slip back, and we'll make progress. And I hope I've told you all, it's never been a better time to be alive on this planet as humans just right now. But we have a ways to go, don't we? So this is just what I'm telling you about medical anthropology, looking at some of the things that have happened to get us to where we are. And some wonderful things have happened, but some unethical things have also happened. And sometimes some unethical things are continuing to happen. But this is why regulation is not really a bad word. Regulation in government, regulation in individual community, business communities is not a bad thing necessarily, right? So anyway, that's just to give you a little background on that. Now, what I'd like you to know is that something called, I want you all to know what the definition is for a scientific theory. Most people don't really know what that means when they hear that something is a scientific theory. So we're going to talk about it for a few minutes. I want you to know that the cell theory is a scientific theory. This is an example of one. And another scientific theory is the theory of evolution, right? So you guys have probably heard of both of those, haven't you? And here's another example. So you know another example is called the germ theory of disease. The germ theory of disease. Okay, so with these examples, you've already heard something about a cell. In the scientific theory, the cell theory, there are 2 premises. One of the premises, and you want to know these 2 premises, one of the premises is that the cell is the smallest thing that we know that has properties of life. Y'all already have that, don't you? You already know that. So a good note taker would say cell number 1, and they remember premise is properties life. Properties life, right? Number 2 is this. You don't write out verbatim. Number 2 is that life comes from pre-existing life. Life comes from pre-existing life. Laketra, that means where did you come from? Who gave you life? Okay, and guess what your mom and dad had? Parents. And guess what they had? Parents. And guess what they had? Parents. So we could go back and back and back. You know, larvae on your meat that you left out, larvae of flies, didn't come just spontaneously spring up. They came because some flies, you might not have seen it happen, but some flies laid some eggs, right? So, and when you build a new barn and you put new hay that you just baled or you just cut down yesterday and you put it in the barn, mice don't spring up in your barn. They don't, you know. But people thought that. People thought that before the cell theory was accepted. Life comes from pre-existing cellular life. We know that. Or that's what we accept. And that the cell is the smallest unit that has properties of life. And most life on this planet is actually single cellular life. Bacteria, proteins, most life on this planet is single cellular life. Some yeast. But some life on this planet is multicellular complex life, right? But life on this planet, the smallest unit of life is a cell. That's number one premise. And the second is that life comes from pre-existing cellular life. I want you to know that that cell theory, we accepted it around 1900 as a scientific theory. Was 1900 that long ago? No. My grandmother that I just told you lost those 3 children. She lost 4 actually, but the 3 from those diseases. She was born in late 1800s. Yes, I'm older than dirt. But okay, true both those things. Okay, 1900 was not that long ago. It's a blink of an eye, wasn't it? And it was because of work done by a scientist called Louis Pasteur. I want you all to know about Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur was really, truly was a scientist at heart. He gave us the process of pasteurization. Y'all have heard of that, haven't you? That can help us, our milk and other liquids, to stay viable longer, right? Y'all know that. Y'all know about pasteurization. You've all heard that process. It's from work that Louis Pasteur did to help figure out how to preserve foods or liquids, especially wine. That's what he was really trying to preserve longer. But he also did some other work concerning this. Scientists for 400 years prior to 1900 had thought that life came from pre-existing life and had thought this, but it took Louis Pasteur's work to finally put that nail in the coffin and said, yeah, no, life doesn't just spring up. So the cell theory replaced, and I want you to know what it replaced the theory of spontaneous generation. Spontaneous generation was that people thought life came from non-life. Why in the world did it take 400 years? Like, we look back on that and think, gosh, okay, that was kind of simple. You know, always, you know what they say about the answer is the simple answer, and it's almost always the case. It really, really is. We make things way more complicated than they need to be. But we look back on it and we think that sounds ridiculous, that mice could come from a newborn and that flies could come from cow piles. You know, they don't. They come from flies-laid eggs, right? So, I mean, it seems ridiculous to us, but it took 400 years before people would let go of the theory of spontaneous generation. Why do you think?
Because nobody knew.
Because it is hard to accept new things. What you say?
They didn't have proof.
Well, they had a lot. It was kind of like a ton, 400 years worth of scientific method being used. That was kind of pushing toward this. But it wasn't accepted because of writings that people grew up with feeling comfortable about that suggested that life springs from non-life. Do you know what those writings are? It's not just the Bible, but it is religious writings. You know, there's a lot. Y'all know about the Bible, it's Christianity, but that's a small religion compared to other religions, right? But yeah, it was religious writings that suggested that. But that's all people know. You know, you only know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And here's what we know about science, and this is what I need you all to know about science and the scientific theory. Science, we said, is a way that we can ask questions about the natural world. And it's limited to the natural world. We can't bring our beliefs into a true scientific discovery. We can't bring them because our beliefs our beliefs come from things that aren't provable, that have nothing to do with the natural world, but have to do with our fears, our emotions, and our prejudices. Do you get that? And I'm not saying those are bad things. Many scientists are very spiritual people. Do you get that? But as in science, you have to leave that out because it can color how you think about things. And most of the coloring is because of fear of the unknown. You get what I mean? So in science, it's limited to the natural world. It's only about the natural world. It's not making judgment on beliefs. It's not judging beliefs, not doing anything. But you have to keep it separate. And you have to try to. And it's really hard because we're humans. And we're all prejudiced. We're not born prejudiced, but we learn it. We learn it, and it's not our finest hour. but it's the nature of society, really, kind of. And so then you try to overcome that. You know, you really do. So I'm just trying to get you in a science mindset. Will you Kind of go there with me? Science is about testing naturally occurring phenomena in our natural world, and scientific theories come from that. Scientific theories are explanatory statements about a natural event. So a scientific theory is a statement that explains a naturally occurring event. I said that in two different ways, didn't I? And I said it in two different ways because one way might hit somebody, and then the next way I said it might hit somebody else. And it might confuse some people that I said it in two different ways. But there are a lot of ways you can say things, as long as you correctly, that that are right. So a scientific theory, the term theory in science is completely different than the way you use theory outside of science. The way you use the term theory outside of science is that I have a theory why she's cheating on him. That's just your opinion. And that's your idea, isn't it? But in science, that's not it. A scientific theory is the best, most exalted, trusted statement for why a naturally occurring event is happening. We have a lot of leaders who don't understand science, don't we? But that's all it is. It's as simple as that. So a scientific theory is really not debatable per se. It's what all the evidence, all of our scientific methodologies are telling us is the reason why this naturally occurring event happens. And all the evidence is pushing it to understanding it this way. Now let me tell you another limitation of science. Just like that theory of spontaneous generation in 1900 was accepted, the scientists had to, and it was one experiment by Louis Pasteur that put it to rest. They had to throw that theory of spontaneous generation out. They had to accept that was wrong. In science, when new evidence, new data, new things come to support something and exhaustive research gets done that tells you the way that you thought something was happening is not right, you have to accept it. Take your egos away, take your fears away, take your all away, look at the data, look at the evidence, look at what's supporting it, and you have to accept it. You get what I'm saying? So this is what science is. So when you hear that something like the theory of evolution, and I've already given you the two premises for the cell theory, but when you look at something like the theory of evolution, you hear about, do we know who's given credit? I have somebody who's told me that this person invented the theory of evolution. Charles Darwin didn't invent the theory of evolution. He did exhaustive, it's just crazy. The research that he was doing, the observations he was making, the connections that he did. People who didn't waste a lot of time on cell phones back in the day, they could do stuff like this, like speak multiple languages and do stuff. But anyway, he did decades worth of study before he realized that life on this planet, as we know it at this moment, that would be mid-1800s, but as we know, evolves. Things. So the theory of evolution, Charles Darwin is given credit for, just like Louis Pasteur is given credit for finally doing the work that needed to be done to help us to explain the cell theory. Charles Darwin was given credit for the theory of evolution by natural selection. Wallace actually had a huge did it first, but Darwin's given credit, so Charles Darwin, so y'all know that. Now I want you to tell me what the theory of evolution says. What does it say? And I want you to realize that we have schools in this state, in Lynchburg, Virginia, that won't teach it. I want you to, and it's science, it's knowledge. But we have places, we have public schools, we have graduates, we have places in this country that won't allow certain things or books to be taught because of fear and unknown. Exactly what's going on. But tell me what the theory of evolution states. And then when I tell you, really, maybe you really know, but when I tell you really what it states, I think you're going to be a little bit shocked that people could be so afraid of this. But anyway, so tell me, what does it say, the theory of evolution? Some of you know. What you learned in high school? You don't remember? It's a long time ago. I said, what do you think? Tell me what your impressions. I don't want any textbook definition. I want your impression. What does the theory of evolution state? Over time, things change. That is part of that. That is true. A lot of people think that the theory of evolution says that man came from monkeys. Is that true? I mean, it's not true, but have you heard something similar to that? Absolutely propaganda falsehoods. If man came from monkeys, we'd still be coming from monkeys. And it would be okay because aren't they cute? You know, so it's funny. But no, that's not what it states. That's not what the theory of evolution states. I'm going to tell you what it states in a nutshell, and this is all it states, in a nutshell. I know you'll read all kinds of stuff, but this is what it states in a nutshell. You ready? And I do kind of want you to write this down verbatim, and then I want to dissect it for you. The theory of evolution states that percentage of traits, the percentage of traits found within a species will change over time. The percentage of traits found within a species will change over time due to environmental pressures. Did that seem like that was going to come and bite you? Did it seem too scary to you? Does the theory of evolution have anything to do, is it saying anything about you as an individual evolving? Not at all. Not at all. Can individuals evolve? Well, we hope so. And that's why people, education is so vital, isn't it? But yes, people can evolve, but that has nothing to do with the theory of evolution. The theory of evolution states simply, and it's about this at a species level. Now, some of you might not know the biological definition for species, but that means all the individuals that are so alike in a group that they can reproduce. They can, have viable, fertile offspring. So they're in a species, if you are. So like on this planet, the Homo sapiens species is, 7 billion plus at this point, right? Is that right? And that means that, we're all one. There's, people talk about 13 different races and lots of the ethnic groups and but we are one race. We're the Homo sapiens. We are one. And we are all closely in geological lifespan time too. We are each other's brothers and sisters. We are one. We are within a species. Now, we are only one species. In insects, there's more than 1 million species of insects. You get me? I'm not even going to tell you how many spiders there are because you might not sleep at night. Okay. I know. I'm just telling you. The theory of evolution states within one species, the traits that are found within the species, the percentage of traits, will change over time. Ladies, I want you to think about this, or everybody, I want you to think about real quick. Most of us, if we were born in Virginia, got to go down to Jamestown during a little school trip or whatever, got on the replicas of the boats. Did any of y'all fit on, some of you were little, did any of you fit out on the boats, or what did you have to do? You were ducking. Christopher Newport's, his armor was that armor that you saw down there, was his. Even the smallest little person in this class can hardly fit in that. Christopher Newport wasn't small for his time. So do you think the height, weight, all those things have changed in Homo sapiens just over 400 plus years? And 400 years is a blink of the eye in evolutionary time. Why? Because the environmental pressures have changed, haven't they? So the percentage of traits found within the population has changed. Lucy, who was all of our grandmothers, do y'all know Lucy? Yeah. Lucy, no, okay. So one of the earliest human things, right? Okay. So Lucy, she was about this tall. She had a lot of hair. We wouldn't have thought it was attractive today, but in her day, she was a runway model. Okay, and she was We are descended from the Lucys, right? So, but anyway, percentage of traits have changed within over time. That's all it states about all living species, period. Ladies, I want you to think about your great, 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 and add about 20 great grandmothers, ladies. And by the way, except for in some cultural things, usually within species, women decide who they mate with. That's why poor little songbirds or little male songbirds are just singing themselves to death. Right? So, in most species, women decide, make the choice. Sometimes because of, again, religious fear, whatever, things or whatever, but it's usually women that make that choice. Ladies, think about that great, 20 greats grandmothers ago. Did she choose the same characteristics, which is the same thing as saying traits, that you're choosing today in your mate? No, if I were back then, I wanted somebody who could outrun that deer, run him down. And hopefully didn't have to run him down with spirit. So somebody with a good arm, somebody with fast feet, by the way, we know before the spears, did you know that men are supposed to, men and women, when I say men, I mean mankind, we're supposed to run. There's lots of scientific evidence to realize that even before the spears and whatnot, we were outrunning our prey. They could do short distances faster than us, but they would wear down, and we would keep running. And we would get to them. I wanted that man. I wanted that man. That's who I picked. And guess what? Guess what stayed in the population? The traits that were good hunter-gatherers, right? Right? Now we might be looking at other things like bank accounts and speedy cars. I don't know what we're doing. No, listen, some things don't change too much. Sometimes it's just chemistry. You think, oh my God, I can't talk. Okay, that's so. Are we good? Are we good? All right. So we get. Is the theory of evolution scary? By the way, there's exhaustive evidence even within your own body of those bacteria that only have a 15-minute generation time rather than our long human and animal generation times. Microbes are evolving. We see it all the time. If you take an antibiotic, what have you done to the, let's say you're taking an antibiotic for urinary tract infection against E. coli bacteria that causes, it's the most common cause of urinary tract infection in women post-puberty. You take the antibiotic. Do you don't think that species of E. coli, the percentage of traits are changing when you take that antibiotic? When you take that antibiotic, you just wipe out all the weak ones. You don't kill, when you take an antibiotic, you're not killing all the things that cause your disease. You're killing enough of them that your body's immune system's able to get well, but you're leaving behind the strong ones. So guess what? If you get to live, guess what you get to do? As humans, you get to have sex if you get to live. And if you get to have sex, you have a chance of sending traits to the next generation. Well, even at a bacterial level, evolution's occurring. We see it, it's supported, it's proven all the time. Even within, and that's just on really a daily, weekly basis, we see that. It supports this theory. Another thing that supports the theory of evolution is something called vestigial organs. And this is down here somewhere, I don't know where it is in your notes, but vestigial organs. If I go buy things, are you responsible for them? No. But vestigial organs, and I'm going to come back to this in a second. So vestigial organs are going to be organs that no longer have a function in humans. I don't even know where it is, but anyway, vestigial starts with a V. It's in vestigial. It's in your notes somewhere. These are organs that we have that no longer work. Did you know that you all have muscles that can raise your ears and point them forward? Let me see y'all do that.
I can't raise them.
Yeah. Oh, that's really a good wiggle. That's like one of the better ones I've ever seen. Right. You can do that, but you can't raise them up and sit them forward. Yeah. So that's it. So yours are kind of sore, but most of us can't use those. Right. We have an appendix, this organ that no longer has real function. But do you think it never did? Do you think these muscles never had a function? They did. Lucy could probably use hers. But we don't need them anymore. So the percentage of traits that were functioning over time changed, didn't they? Guess what that is?
Evolution.
Evolution. It is. Percentage of traits changing over time within a species. And it's because of the environment. What's available in the environment? Giraffes, guess where their food sources were? High up in the canopies of the trees, right? And it was because of probably because of environmental things that it wiped out all the lower ones. So the ones that could get the higher, those traits became the trait that we saw more and more and more. And now we consider giraffes with a long neck to be the norm for that species, right? So it's been proven. Darwin had multiple species he followed and saw that this actually happened. So anyway, and then since then, so much more. So this is just what's been supported. You get it? So now I need to tell you, a scientific theory is not like you use the term theory outside of science. This is an exhaustive explanation using best facts, using laws of chemistry, and using the scientific method over and over and over again to support. You think only one study gets done, or do you think it's exhaustive? I just told you that the cell theory exhaustive scientific methods for 400 years by many different scientists before it was finally accepted, right? So I want you to write down the 5 steps of the scientific method. The scientific method, just write these steps down for right now, if you will. Write these steps down for right now. Write down 1, observation. 2, a question. 3, hypothesis. 4, a test. 5, a conclusion. You write down those 5 things in order. Observation, question, hypothesis, test, conclusion. Now I want to let you know something. That's common sense. You can't ask a question until you've observed something, right? You don't just ask questions willy-nilly. You make an observation about something, and then you ask the question about it. Let me tell you, every one of you all have used the scientific method steps dozens of times already today. Sarah, you opened your eyes this morning, saw your alarm clock, made an observation about your alarm clock. You made an observation about your alarm clock and that your alarm didn't go off. You asked the question, why didn't my alarm go off? Observation question. And guess what we are as humans? We take what we know going in and we answer it. That's called a hypothesis statement. You answer it by saying, my significant other turned off my alarm. But you would make that statement, and that statement is a hypothesis. Can you test your hypothesis? You can. You might lie. Or she might lie. But anyway, you could test it, and then could you say in your conclusion whether you accept or reject your hypothesis? You all have done this a dozen times. You got in your car, you made an observation, no gas. Okay, you got in your car and you made the observation, no gas. You said to yourself, why don't I have gas in my car? And then you answered it. Somebody stole my gas. And then you test it by going to like cameras or something. And then you, from the conclusion, you think, okay, nobody stole it. I probably used it all. Or whatever. You get what I'm saying? You guys, scientific method is common sense. It's the way logical people think about things. Now you'll end up knowing people who don't really do that. They just kind of go off, don't they? They don't try to logically. But in the scientific method, those 5 steps make perfect sense. Now let me tell you about all the exhaustive research. I'm making fun of everyday things, whatever. But y'all realize for really true scientific theories, that is knowledge. You don't have, I'm not telling anybody you have to believe anything, but you should know what the best science is out there, because otherwise you just go on and stick your head in the ground, right? Just be afraid. But people should be given that information, right? So anyway, using scientific method is exhaustive. The testing that's done before something is considered a scientific theory. And so let me tell you the steps that have to be in place to trust a scientific theory. Let me tell you, these are steps, and actually they're just procedures, and so you can jot them down and just listen, because they should make sense to you. So when you are using scientific method for a true research, like a pharmaceutical company thinks this oil from this plant might have this effect, right? They're going to have a huge sample size. They better, or nobody's going to have any confidence in their conclusions. Because I could come to you, Talia, and I could say, Tara, why did I say that? Tara, I could come to you, Tara, and I could say, hey, take this oil and it's going to make your joints feel better. And it might work for her, and then I could sell it because 100% of my research showed that it made that happen. One person, right? That's ridiculous. So huge sample sizes have to be included, or we don't have confidence in the conclusion, that fifth step. Huge sample sizes. Blind and double-blind studies. Why? The blind is because the people being tested, they don't know whether they're getting a placebo or the real thing. Because the your brain is powerful, and the psychosomatic effects is powerful. People, do you know how many people, I used to bartend 40 years ago, and when I was bartending, do you know how many times bartenders give people virgin drinks with no alcohol, and over a course of 3 or 4 hours, those people get falling down drunk? I have seen that happen. I didn't do that because that was really an unethical thing, but I knew bartenders who did it, and I've seen it happen. The mind is a powerful thing. This is why hope, this is why gratitude is a powerful thing. They're powerful for your immune system. Believe that. Believe that. So, blind. They get blind because the person doesn't know. So then when you get to the results, testing, you can take out that percentage that was just psychosomatic. Because the numbers should still be speaking to you. You get what I mean? Why is it double blind? Is that what you're going to ask? Yes. All right, because me, as a person doing the experiment, I'm a human. So what do I have? I wasn't born with them, but guess what I have? Even if I think I don't, guess what I have? Prejudices. And I also might have a dog in the fight, which means that I could make money and I could make fame if this worked out for me. So a double-blind study means that not only the testing subjects don't know who's getting what, but the researcher doesn't know what testing subjects are getting it. Because let's think about if I were testing a drug in this class right now. I could actually, because I kind of think it might be better on young women. So I'm going to give my young, I would end up giving, even though they wouldn't know it, I was giving them and making the placebos for men and the older. You get what I mean? So I double-blinded. And if it's double-blinded study, do we have even more confidence in that fifth step? What was the fifth step? And you have confidence, don't you? Let me tell you what else you do. Sample size, blind and double-blind studies, peer review. So you get somebody who is as much of an expert at carrying out a study as you are, and you get them to repeat it on their own sample size because they're not going to get any fame from it, and they're not going to get any money from it. And they get the same results you do. What do you have even more confidence in? Conclusion. So you have peer review. Then you have somebody looking at the statistics and making sure numbers don't lie, because guess what? Numbers can lie. We can tell you that we have 100% pass rate on our NCLEX for our nursing program. But if we only had one person who actually made it through our program and took the test, does that 100% mean anything to you? It means nothing. Do you get what I mean? Numbers can lie, so you have to have somebody looking at the numbers and saying, hey, stop saying that, because that is not a significant number. That was one of my jobs at UVA, was working in epidemiology and reviewing from medical journals the statistical reviews and making sure that what they were saying was actually a significant number. And some journals, some articles that have already passed, already been published, had to recant and say, okay, well, maybe it wasn't, or not even maybe, but that it wasn't. We're going to do more testing. So all of those things combined, though, if you've used them all, you have more confidence in the conclusion. Yes. Before something is considered a scientific theory, all of those things have happened and are continuing. You never stop studying in science. You continue because you're continuing to learn. And new things, new approaches, new research availability might make you realize, wait a minute. We have to rethink this. And even if it hurts our feelings, we have to rethink this, right? So that's what that is. Now, I want you to, actually in your notes, I want you to put away, no, don't put away your notes, but I want you to go to a different page and call it Lab 1. Okay? I want you to go to a different page and I want you to call it Lab 1. By the way, in labs, for lab physics that we have here in this Lab 1, I'm going to give you some objectives for Lab 1. And before you leave, I want you to also take this practice thing for Lab 1. This is not to be handed back into me, but we will go over it in a week from today, because we're only going to get to the first part today, but after that, the next time we meet, we'll do this part. So the only thing you want to practice on is this after today. Then we'll practice on this after, what day is it? After next Tuesday, and you guys will be good, and this will be exactly the way that the lab was. Lab 1 was not the same numbers, but the same, right? Fair enough? Right, okay, okay, good. Great. Now look, measurements in science. In science, we deal with really huge numbers, huge, like kilometers, the Earth from the sun. You know, we're talking about many zeros, right? That is just big, huge, whole numbers. But in science, we're also sometimes deal with really small numbers. I want you all to tell me, oh, well, I can write it on here now. I want you all to tell me, do you know what this number is? It's 1,000, isn't it? It's 1,000 puppies, 1,000 M&Ms, 1,000 Hershey Kisses. You see what I'm thinking about? It's 1,000 kittens, right? You knew that, didn't you? If I told you that you had this much pizza, what would you say? So you would say 5/10. You knew that was 5/10, which is the same as saying a half. Did everybody know that? Everybody knew that. So guess what? You already know the metric system. How many of you feel nervous about the metric system? Anybody? And using the metric system. Well, let me tell you, in science, when we are dealing sometimes with numbers that might look like this, and if it's not any decimal around here, we know the decimals where. We know that. We know this is a whole number. When we're dealing, that's a hard number to talk about, especially if you're doing research and you got to use it about 100 times in your paper. So there's an easier way to express it. It's called scientific notation. Scientific notation is not converting. It is not changing the number. It's just saying it in an easier way. That's all it is, right? And so in medicine too, we just recently discovered a hormone that was in, actually I'll use the mat again, because it was in this, this amount. So that's is it even 1 gram? Is it even a tenth? What's this? 100? Thousands? Not even 1,000. Right? It's not 10,000. It's not 100,000. Not even a million. Right? So this was minute, tiny. Is there an easier way to write these? What do we use that? What do we call that? Scientific notation, right? So I'm going to tell you a couple of steps, and you'll always have it right in doing scientific notation, and I'll tell you why that was important to know. And by the way, if you knew what this was and this was, you already know the metric system, because the metric system is based on 10. So you already know it. I want you to get rid of all your fears and prejudices. You already know it. And we have to use it for accuracy, because it's the only thing that truly has accuracy. Let me give you a couple of steps. You ready to use scientific notation? In a number, and we'll just do this one first, if you will. So let's ignore the rest of this, but we're just going to use this number first. If you're trying to express this in an easier way, the first thing you always do, I don't care what the number is, the first thing you always do is look for the first real number. We read numbers left to right. So the first real number is what? And you put an imaginary decimal. behind. This is imaginary. It's not really there, the decimal. but you put an imaginary decimal behind it, and then you locate your real decimal. Where did you say the real decimal is? It's at the end. So far, those two steps are kind of easy, right? Okay, so now, and this is really one of the last steps, now you just count the spaces between the imaginary and the real. And I know you're going to be saying, go to the left, you can do it. Forget that. Forget that. Forget everything that you might have learned in that. But honestly, and just pay attention. It won't matter if I start counting here or if I start counting here. It's going to be the same number, okay? But we count. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now, if this was my dissertation I was working on, I count that like 3 times, make sure I had 15 spaces. Was it 15? Did y'all count with me? But if it's 15, if that's the number of spaces, that's the exponent to the power of 10. Fair enough? And your imaginary number decimal becomes your real decimal, and any real numbers following it would have to be put. So 9.3 times 10 to the 15. Is that this number in scientific notation? Which one was the easiest one to write? This one. Did I change the number? No, I didn't change that number. I just did those few little steps and I added. Now let's see if we can do that for this one. Let's see if we can do that. Now we wouldn't really have to because it's easy to say 1,000, isn't it? It's kind of easy to say 1,000. But let's go ahead. We can do it. So let's go ahead and let's say the first real number is what? You put an imaginary decimal behind it. Then what did you do? Located your real decimal, didn't you? Then what did you do between them? Count. 1, 2, 3. Did you do that? And that becomes your exponent, power 10. And you wouldn't have to say 1 times, but you could, and that would be the same thing. Is this number the same as that? Okay. Because anything times 1 is just itself, so you know, whatever. That's right. Was that hard? Okay, so let's go ahead and let's do this next. The smaller number, something that's not even 1. It's not. I look at that and I know that's not even 1 of something. I look at this number and I know this isn't even 1. It's not even a 10. It's not 100. This is stuff. But I use the same steps. So when I look at this number, what is my first real number I get to? What's the first real number I get to? What you said? 9. And I put an imaginary decimal. Now in this case, the decimal to give it, isn't it? So now all I have to do is what? Count between them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Everybody agree that I did that correctly, counting? 7. And so that becomes my exponent to the power of 10. My imaginary number becomes my real number, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Becomes my real number. My imaginary decimal becomes my real decimal, and that real number has to be written. But I'm not finished yet, because when I look at this number, I know it's not even 1. So what must I put? And is this that? That's the same thing. I didn't convert it, did I? No conversion. I just did that. All right, how about this one? Could we do this one in scientific? We would really need to because it's easy to write like that. But could we?
Yes.
And all I do is imaginary decimal, real decimal. What's the space number? And it's 1 power 10, right? That becomes real. Is that right? And what do I have to do that I cannot forget? Actually, that looks easier than that. But you know what I'm saying? So sometimes we don't need scientific notation, but sometimes we really do, right? And by the way, the reason the only reason I'm giving you this about scientific notation seriously is because I want you to know where these exponent numbers came from. You see these exponent numbers? I want you to understand that they're not made up. They're actually decimal spaces that were counted, weren't they? Do you hear that? Do you have any questions so far? Because I'm going to give you one other bit of information, and then we're going to finish this lab one next Tuesday. But I need you to start. Okay. So that is great that you guys kind of feel. And by the way, if you don't have this being able to, and you've got some more practice ones on your practice thing, if you don't have it by next Tuesday, no big deal. But but get it, get with somebody and get it by then, after that. But try to practice it on your own. Try to go back and listen to the recording. You'll be able to see this and try to practice these on your own. What is it about math? Practice, right? Most people are nervous about math because the math that they need was really truly third grade math, and they haven't had it since third grade. And so it's scary. And I don't care who you are. I've had pediatricians that I worked with that were so math phobic that they worked through drug dosage problems 2 or 3 times to make sure that they were right before they wrote a script. So, everybody has a thing, but if you're not using it, you lose it. So anyway, so practice it. Now, I want to let you all know something. If you understood what we just did, where those exponents came from, then you already know decimals. You're going to know metric conversion in 3 steps. But you don't, I'm just going to introduce it now. This is standard unit. So in the metric system, a little g, does anybody know what that stands for as far as mass goes or weight? It stands for gram, doesn't it? Gram, a little g. How about, and that's for weight. How about a little m is the standard unit? What does that stand for? For distance, meter. So your little m. And how about a little l? What does that stand for? Liters. Liter. So these are called standard units. We could say a seconds on a clock are a standard unit. Kittens are a standard unit. Kisses, right? Teardrops. These are standard units. In other words, nobody should ever give you a number without telling you the standard unit. Nobody's going to come up to you and say, Destiny, I have 4. Because Destiny, what would you say to me? 4. You say 4 what? You have to have a standard unit. Nobody's going to come to you and say, right? Because you would say what? You would say 22 what do you have? You don't get a number without a standard unit. And it might be grams, might be talking about weight, might be talking about distance, might be talking about volume, or it could be talking about, Hershey Kisses. Okay, now let me just say this to you. Our system, our American system, I could give you all a test right now on converting in our American system for weight, distance, and liters, and I would bet money, and I really don't have money to lose, but I would feel real confident that not one of you would pass it. The American measurement system is idiotic. None of you would pass it. None of you know it. How many of you think you know it? How many of you think you think you know it? So you think you know how many teaspoons are in 0.7 gallons? No, well, that's our system, huh? No. Do you know how many teaspoons are in a cup? Do you know how many teaspoons are in a tablespoon? And that's easy. It's 3.
No, it's
You know how many? Hey, by the way, and I'm not trying to make you. I just letting. I have people tell me all the time, I can pass our system. I know it. No, they don't. And then I start asking questions. They don't know it. And unfortunately, we're hanging on to it. Do you know other countries look at us as like, what? What? They're looking at us that way these days for a lot of reasons.
Look, I just said the same thing.
Okay, vote is all I can say. Okay, look. So the liter. Let's just talk about our system. We have ounces, we have teaspoons, we have tablespoons, we have pints, we have cups, pints, we have quarts, we have gallons, we have. It's ridiculous. And if somebody asked you to convert, you wouldn't pass it. I'm telling you. In the distance, we have inches, we have feet. We had crazy numbers in each because of some royalty that was measured as foot size. We had yards, we had miles. How many feet are in a mile? How many feet are in a mile? How many what?
Feet in a mile.
Feet in a mile.
I can't convert it.
You don't know. So you thought you knew our system. We don't. You don't. It's 5,280. So how many yards are in a mile? Then you have to divide that by 3. You have these crazy whole numbers, these crazy real numbers. Is that right? You don't know your system, and not just you. I wouldn't want to take a test on it either. Because when you do, you end up getting these, because of these crazy numbers, you get these remainder numbers, whole numbers plus remainders. Can you get medicine like that?
No.
No, that would not be exact. And the amount of errors that would go into that is just mind-boggling. Okay, let's talk about this. We have ounces, we have what? We have pounds, we have tons, we have that, right? But when we think about this, think about pilots that are international. You know, pilots have to do a whole different thing for international flight because that's all metric. And that's easy for them. Whole numbers, like if you have a whole number in anything, like 250 kilometers from something, that whole numbers are never going to change. The only thing that changes in metric is the decimal place. There's no dividing by 12 or dividing by 4 or multiplying by 3. Do you get what I'm? There's no crazy 12, 4, 3, 16 ounces. And there's none of that. None of that. It's moving away.
Okay.
Period. That's all it is. But we have these international pilots who have to end up flying back into U.S. airspace. God, I think they might be the smartest people you ever met. But hey, ladies, a trade? You have a trade? You're looking for it? You might want an international pilot. So anyway, because they gotta be smart. I'm telling you, because when they come back into U.S. airspace, they have to go back to the mile thing. And I'm gonna tell you something, that's gonna play a role in how they land you, right? And then whatever, and come into that airport. I'm promising you, it's crazy. So it's when I was in high school 5 decades ago, okay, maybe 4, whatever. We were going to, in the 70s, get rid of the U.S. system. And Congress said, okay, on this date, everybody's going to the metric system. This is 5 decades ago. Progress is slow. Still hadn't happened. But the teachers didn't know how to teach it. And guess what? They still don't. And they didn't know how to teach the metric system. And now the Congress didn't know how to do it either. So they couldn't make something happen when they didn't know it either. So 5 decades later, guess where we are? We are still doing this. And none of us know it. None of us even know ours. Do you get that? Now I'm going to tell you, because I got to let you go, but I'm going to tell you 3 steps, if you'll bear with me, about metric conversion, and you're going to know how to convert within the metric system, and you're never going to want to hear on the system again. If y'all want to just take this, just turn back into me, but just practice the scientific notation for now. And if you will, wait, unless you feel great about conversion in the metric system, I'm going to give you 3 steps, and you'll always be able to convert in the metric system with confidence and practice. So take these given X's back to me, okay? Do y'all have enough for notes for next week, Tuesday? Do you have enough to do study guide? It's possible. Did you take any notes today? Remember the lab is separate. Don't put lab on your study guide. So study guide for lectures. Okay, I'm going extras. Thank you for giving my extras back. Thank you. I'm going to do a little bit.